Oh, I've never been so happy in my entire life. The world belongs to just the two of us now. It feels like everything around us is no longer important. That may sound selfish, but if you've only ever been there for others and have sacrificed your whole life for the well-being of those around you, then you're allowed to be selfish, aren't you? I think so. And that's why I'm not going to justify myself here now. Instead, I'm just going to enjoy this time while it lasts. I deserve that. You want to know what's going on? I'll be happy to tell you. We have time. All the time in the world, as my daddy has always said. My Walter and I are currently experiencing our second spring. That may sound strange at our age. Young people would probably roll their eyes. Anyone over 50 is almost in the grave for you. But let an old woman tell you that life has still a lot to offer even in old age. It's a shame that I'm only now experiencing this at over 60, but better late than never. My daddy used to say that too. Not that my life has been bad so far. That's not what I'm saying. But when the second spring hits you, you learn to appreciate life in a completely different way. Is it true, Walter? Why don't you say something? Oh, Walter has never been a man of big words. No, he was always a man of action, just like my daddy. And that immediately fascinated me about him. Hands rather than words was always his motto. Am I right, Walter? Yes, that was the case, and it still is today. But let me start from the beginning. We met exactly 50 years ago. You have to imagine that. 50 years. Together. What a long time. Some people can only dream of that. The moment I first saw Walter, I was instantly in love with him. I know how cheesy that sounds. I'm not a fan of such stories myself, but when you live in one yourself, it changes you. Of course, we also argued from time to time. Sometimes heatedly, that's just part of any good marriage. That's just the way it is, and anyone who says otherwise is simply lying. Yes, even the bad marriages. More so in the bad ones, of course, but even in a good marriage, the sparks have to fly. As long as other things fly afterwards, such as clothes on the bedroom floor, if you know what I mean. Many couples never get out of the stormy phases of a marriage, and that's a real shame, because it's worth fighting for. You may not believe it in the dark moments, but the sun always rises again somewhere. We always manage to get out of a hole, and that wasn't always easy either. I can tell you that. It took a lot of sweat and many tears. Wasn't it, Walter? Well, most of the time it cost me something, but that's the way it is sometimes. Some people give more to keep something going, others less. And I've always given everything. If our marriage had broken up at some point, it certainly wouldn't have been because of me. No, definitely not. I've always given everything I could give. I can proudly say that. But Walter also had dark days sometimes. They were particularly bad. Dark and loud, and they cost me a lot. But that's over now. He's a new person now. It's true, Walter. Don't look at me like that. You've changed, and I love it. Of course, I've always loved you, but the last few weeks have been really, really nice. There are no more blue lights, no more broken dishes. I no longer have to make excuses that nobody believes anyway. I no longer have to wear makeup and the pain in my abdomen is gone. We made love almost tenderly. You have to imagine that. Admittedly, it felt a little awkward, but it was full of love. It's never been so beautiful. That's right, Walter. I know you've always enjoyed it, but now it's really, really nice for me too. They always say it gets less with age, but that was never the case with us. Walter was always happy to lend a hand, whether I wanted him to or not. Good old days. But I don't want them back. Everything is much better now. We're lucky. Age has been pretty kind to us so far. I'm sure we can still spend a few good years together if it weren't for the constant. Do you hear that? Someone's knocking at the door again. The neighbors are always complaining about something. It would smell weird now. It just comes with age, what can I say? People have just been a bit weird lately, almost as if they thought we had something to hide. That's nonsense, of course. But people like to look for dirt on others to talk about so they don't have to deal with their own problems. But I'm used to it. Everyone has been talking shit about us for years. Neighbors, work colleagues, and even those who called themselves friends. Have you heard that she always wears those scarves, even in summer? He always drinks so much. You can hear her crying all the time. Always, constantly, again. These seem to be popular words for everyone who liked to talk about us. Only it wasn't always, not constantly, not again. It was once in a while, sometimes, occasionally. Never worth talking about, actually. However, gossiping about others is the rule in our society, not the exception. Nobody can absolve themselves of this, not even me. I'm not proud of it, but I too have made a spiteful comment about someone at one time or another. I suppose it's human nature. But does it have to be that they say, always, constantly, again? That annoys me. But if you want to talk badly about others, the truth rarely matters. Now people have stopped doing that. Instead, they annoy me with other stupid things. And those constant questions. Where is Walter? We don't even see him anymore. They never used to care about that. But now, all of a sudden, that's the first question on everyone's lips. It's true, he's withdrawn. But what's wrong with that? He just concentrates more on me now. Admittedly, in the past, he often went out, liked to have one or two too many drinks with the boys, and then came home quite angry. But he's stopped doing that now and spends his time with me. Without shouting and without raging, and no longer with his hands like my daddy used to do. I have been asking for this for years, almost begging, and finally he has accepted it. It still took some convincing, but he finally understood. Isn't that right, Walter? You had to be convinced, but I did it. And the funny thing is that I used my hands for the first time. Now I understand why you've always done it. It feels great to convince someone like that. At last, you had nothing to counter to and were finally quiet. Isn't that right, Walter? Almost a little too quiet. You should say something every now and then. But by the way, you've never been much of a philosopher. Damn it, stop knocking! How can they be so rude? What has happened to human decency? When it used to be loud in our house, nobody minded, not even when I fought back a few weeks ago. And that was quite a racket, too. But did anyone care? No. People can talk about us, but nobody intervenes. But now that it supposedly smells weird, they're all coming. But I will not open the door, and Walter certainly won't. Right, Walter? You don't do anything anymore. Who could have guessed that such a small wound on the head would bleed so much? Not me, that's for sure. And Daddy's urn isn't actually that heavy. What a mess. Funny, isn't it? My daddy would have loved it. He was happy to lend a hand. Yeah, you didn't see that coming, did you, Walter? No, it was a surprise. I couldn't surprise you very often, but I did at that time. Well, at some point it stopped bleeding. Unfortunately, the carpet was already messed up. But there's no one we can leave it to anyway. Who would want to have such an old thing? Even without all the blood, brain splatter, and Daddy's ashes, the thing is pretty ugly if I'm honest. And honesty is the most important thing. Isn't that right, Walter? Walter? Don't just look at me. Say something. You've been so quiet for weeks now. God damn it! Stop disturbing us! We are finally happy!
I am Maggie J, and you're listening to Thrill, Suspense, Crime, and more. If you like what you hear, subscribe to my channel for a new story every week.